I was restrained during childbirth. Talk of restraint. I had a C-section. My arms and chest were aggressively. She wrapped the tape around multiple areas and multiple times. It was not just a small piece taped down to the operating table during the surgery. I asked not to be taped down or restrained in any way. After the surgery was over and I wanted to hold my baby, I asked again for them to take the tape off. I did not say please or act sheepish about. I told them I wanted it off so I could hold my baby. Take it off. I was told in no uncertain terms that I was not going to be allowed to hold my baby and they weren't going to take the tape off. It was the only thing in my birth plan, to get to hold and feed the baby when it was first born. There was so much tape they apologized after the surgery and had to wait a while to go find a pair of scissors to cut off. There is no proof, no recourse. I will get no justice for what happened. I feel violated, heartbroken and shaken even a couple years later. But I am hoping here you will believe me. Why in the hell did they do that? I wanted to share my story in hopes you find comfort in knowing you're not alone. I had this experience in 2017. I had an emergency C-section. They did the prick test but I told them I could still feel. They didn't believe me and went on with the procedure. I begged them to stop, told them it hurt, and eventually they strapped me down. 6 years later I still feel so hurt and sad over my daughter's birth. However, I want you to know this isn't the norm. I went on to give birth via planned C-section at a different hospital to my second and it was such a different experience. Sharing love and healing thoughts. I lost feeling from my ring fingers down in my C-section. My understanding was the straps mine were Velcro, pretty sure are there to ensure you don't fall off accidentally. I also was not able physically to hold anything, much less my baby, because I had lost so much feeling temporarily, but we did skin to skin shortly after with someone helping me. That doesn't help your hurt feelings, but perhaps it was not done maliciously. I am so sorry you were violated during an already difficult, vulnerable moment. I, too, was violated during childbirth and still dealing with the trauma 2 years later. Seriously. Reading your post brought me back and I just sobbed. But no one ever cares because baby is healthy and you're okay. Said it doesn't matter. After some other traumatic events in the year prior. This really broke me and I have been living in survival mode ever since. I hope you are able to be gentle with yourself while you navigate this trauma. Your feelings are valid. You have every right to feel the feelings you do. Be safe, heart. I've had 2 C-sections in the US. And my arms have never been restrained in any way. Even when I had a bit of the narcotics shakes. And I held both babies with nurse assistance ASAP. Out of the OR and into the recovery room. 35 years ago I had an emergency C-section, fetal distress, and they strapped me down. I had already had an epidural so I was awake, but they didn't tell me anything. Including why I shook so much after. I asked but they behaved like they didn't know. Nothing about that birth was good other than getting my son heart. My epidural anesthesia went off during the cesarean with my daughter. As they were cutting me but I was not able to move. So I screamed a few times until they were able to hear me that I feel everything they do and it hurts. Maybe some people also move if this is happening. But although I was restrained it was not as much as you describe. And they got my daughter next to me, they put her face to touch mine since I could not hug her. I am so sorry. That's appalling. Absolutely believe you. What happened to you was not as disgusting how they behaved. I was not strapped down during my caesarean. I had to rest my arms on the arm rests that reminded me of Jesus on the cross. But nothing was holding me down. Only thing on my arms were a blood pressure cuff and the pulse reader on my finger. I couldn't tell you if my bottom half was strapped in. but I had free movement of my arms. I've had 2 C-sections and was not restrained in this way, my arms and chest at least. No idea what was going on below the waist due to epidural, but it's logical to me to retrain the noodle legs. I'm so sorry this happened to you. If there was a safety reason to have done it, they should have explained it and ensured your comfort. I absolutely encourage you to file a complaint. Yup. Sadly common. C-section birth of twins. Arms were strapped down like I was crucified. I could not touch either baby. I finally got to hold one over 24 hours later, and I did not get to hold the other until 8 days after their birth, as she was transferred to a children's hospital 24 hours after birth. I'm sorry this awful. Did you have anyone else there who could witness what happened? Midwives? Your partner? Any family? I think you need to talk to lawyers and lodge a complaint everywhere you can. I've had 2 C-sections. Restrained for the first and not the second. My first was an emergency C-section after days of laboring. My limbs were weak and shaking, and my teeth never stopped chattering during the operation. My second at the same hospital was a planned C-section. The mood was completely light and I was not restrained, and joked with the anesthesiologist during the procedure. It's been since 2006, but I had an emergency C-section and my arms were restrained. I also got put under because I could feel the poking. The recovery was awful due to having a tube down my throat. With my first son, I had to have my placenta manually removed without anesthesia. Absolutely has to be what getting disemboweled feels like. That was in 2004. Birth trauma is real. I never wanted a third after I went through with both of mine. WTF. I had a C-section and was in no way taped down. They had the sheet up so I couldn't see anything, but they said to relax as much as possible and it went super smooth. I woke up during my kidney biopsy. I remember the feeling of something inside me and I was terrified. I was strapped down to prevent me from hurting myself, but tape was never used. The nurse kept telling me to not move, and it took every ounce of willpower not to. It felt so callous at the time, but if I had moved I could have really hurt myself. I wish that there was more compassion or someone explained to me what was going on. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Much love. Medical trauma is no joke. This was done during both of my C-sections. It's to keep the sterile field. I had 3 birthing experiences in 3 different hospitals, and every time something bizarre, unusual or onto wards happened. Ranging from wouldn't expect that to, wow, we need to file a report. I believe you. I had to have a cesarean for my daughter. They stuck me 13 times trying to get the epidural in before I begged them to put me under. I wanted to die inside when they strapped me down before putting me under. I wouldn't have been able to handle doing that awake. I panicked as they drugged me. I have the utmost respect for anyone who can get a cesarean awake. It was horrifying for those couple minutes before I zonk out. I can only imagine what it would be like awake. Utmost respect. But I am hoping here you will believe me. That should never even be a question here. This should always be a space where we believe victims. I am so truly sorry this happened to you, and I definitely believe you. I hope that you never, ever experience something like that again, and hope that you find peace. Heartsuit. I was also restrained like I was on S-cross for my C-section and didn't get to hold my son for like 3 hours. The whole 5-day situation was awful, and I'm in EMDR therapy to deal with things. One of which is specifically my traumatic birth. I didn't feel like anyone listened to me, and it started to feel like I was legit being tortured. Sorry you had something so awful happen. Wow. Really grateful for the very progressive hospital where I gave birth. This is awful. I would have freaked the fuck out.